Hey friends, before we dive into this week's episode, just a heads up. Our podcast talks about suicide, sexual abuse, and other trauma, and some of what you hear may be triggering, so please listen with care. This is The Survivors, real stories, raw conversations, and the truth about what it means to keep going after the hardest things. We're so glad you're here. Let's keep surviving together. Welcome back to The Survivors. It's another week, so it's another conversation. Back with Natasha. Today we're going to have another hard conversation. I know it's hard conversation after hard conversation, but we're here to have them, and we're doing it together. And this one is one that we have not had on this show before in all of the seasons past. This is a show about sexual abuse. And this is not something that I have any experience with myself personally, but Natasha, I know that you do. And we talk a lot about surviving all different things on this podcast, not in a documentary kind of sense, but through just the voice of people who have survived it. And Natasha, before we start and talk about this aspect of your story, I just want to say something really clearly. Survivors do not owe the world a graphic version of their trauma. You don't. To be believed. You just don't. You're sharing what you decide to share from a place of your own autonomy and power, and that in and of itself is an act of survival. So I just want to throw that out there and make that statement before we even get into this conversation. So if you're a survivor and you're listening, you are in control. You might not feel it, but you are in control. You can pause, you can skip, you can come back later. If this conversation is tough for you, you can stop it altogether. We're not going anywhere. We'll always be here. Your nervous system and what's going on the inside is way more important than finishing an episode. So, Nash, I want to start this the way I think we should start it. Are you ready to talk about this? Okay. So I want to start before your abuse. Just a lot of the times when we talk about sexual trauma, I think people jump straight to the event. But I feel like people should know a little bit about what happened before. I know you've talked about it in past episodes, so maybe just give people kind of the when this happened, how old you were when this happened, who your abuser was, and maybe just talk about what did silence feel like about this when it did come out? I know it didn't. It happened at one point in your life, and it came out much, much later. So I guess just lay a little bit of the groundwork. We can keep that part of it quick, and then you can just kind of talk about the after effects.
So the initial abuse happened between the ages of 3 and 4. My abuser was my older brother, Marcus. He's 9 years older than I am. So he was old enough to know better. And he lured me up into his room and touched me inappropriately. And it happened multiple times. I don't know exactly how many times. I just know that it happened multiple times. And I do remember I adored him as a young child. I spent so much time with him. That's the hard part, is looking back and realizing that I loved and adored him. And I remember he would let me comb his hair. It was just this weird thing that we did as kids. We would comb our siblings' hair, and we would hang out and watch movies. We were a very loving and affectionate family, very close with each other. And so it was a mixture of, there was this love and this adoration for him. And then when I started having the flashbacks at 14, it completely shifted my perspective of, wait a minute, did he actually love me, or was he grooming me? And I knew instinctively when I started having the flashbacks, I remember knowing that I was not allowed to talk about this. How a 3 or 4-year-old knew that, but I knew that this was not something that I was allowed to talk about.
Instinct is an interesting thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You just have that fear hardwired into you. I think that if I say something, either I'm in trouble because I said it, or people are going to think I'm lying because I'm so little, or it's hard to understand where that comes from, but it just comes, I guess, right?
Well, and it does, and the shame part of it comes in, did I ask for it? Did I do something to present myself in a way that made me ask for it? But, a lot of retrospect and things like there's no way that a child could ask for that kind of treatment.
Yeah.
And and so when I was having the flashbacks, it came with so much guilt and shame and not believing that it was real, grappling with, am I making this up? But then the flash, it just kept coming like vivid dreams, but that would shake me to the core. And I just was so out of touch with my body. And there's so much of my childhood I don't remember because it was built in locking these memories away and
Mm.
not being able to process it. And then that coupled with the being so brutally treated by my other siblings, not sexually abused, but just they were brutal. They were mean. There was a lot of bullying that happened, and I don't remember a lot of my childhood, and it's really quite sad. And so I just learned that just to be quiet and to just deal with it.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about your average everyday Brady Bunch family here. We're talking about there were 20 of you in your family. There were three mothers. You come from the FLDS polygamy cult led by Warren Jeffs. He's your uncle. You did not live what most people would consider to be your average ordinary childhood. You have 20 siblings. You're living an extremely restricted lifestyle, and you're also now being subjected to, we've talked in previous episodes about the physical abuse that you were subjected to, the emotional abuse, now sexual abuse, and and to be in an environment where you were not allowed to show that anything was less than perfect in the community that you lived in. You were not allowed to show that. So you add all of those layers onto your story, and it's an absolute miracle that you're sitting here having this conversation with me.
Yeah, I genuinely looking back in my journals because I started journaling around the ages of 11 or 12. I don't know how I survived. I truly honestly don't, other than I was absolutely in a state of survival, and it was just get through each day the best I could and hope that I could have the strength to do it again the next day.
Yeah, yeah. So in the past couple of episodes where we've really we've really gone deep into your story, because your story extends, unfortunately, way beyond sexual abuse and domestic abuse. It also extends to your own suicide attempts, multiple suicide attempts, and losing 5 brothers from your family to suicide. So there's a lot going on in your history. But today we're talking about the sexual abuse part. And I know, just I think it's worth saying that you said it was your older brother. He's 9 years older. He was confronted about it once you finally, years later, opened up and shared it with your parents. He did admit to it. So it was not that you would ever need any kind of validation from anyone that this happened to you. You know what happened to you, but he did admit that he did this to you. So when all that came out and the apology, if we're calling it an apology, I know he wrote you a letter and he wrote your mother a letter, but w- now that's got you as a teenager. You were what, 16, 17 at that point when all of that was happening?
When I told my parents I was I wanna say 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay. Okay. So you were pretty firmly a teenager at that
Mhm.
point. You were definitely dealing with very adult issues, trying to navigate them mostly by yourself, unfortunately, because you didn't end up getting a lot of support from your family. So, looking back, I want to dive into, if you're feeling comfortable talking about it, what did that abuse teach your body? I know it might seem like a weird question, but what did that hardwire into you, into your nervous system, things about safety and touch and trust? Where did it go inside you when you dealt with all that so much later?
Well, the interesting thing is in therapy, when finally started going to therapy at 18, I think, when I talked to my therapist about it, because I used to do like play therapy with my dolls, my Barbies, and
Mm,
I was literally doing play therapy on my own. And he said the sexual side of my brain got woken up at obviously at too young. And so I was doing things to cope with that, unbeknownst to my brain. My sister said that I would make some weird comments, like we would be watching a movie and some would kiss, on screen, just a kiss, and I was 6, and I said, "Oh, that makes my privates tickle."
okay.
What?
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was just this whole sexual side of my brain that was awake, but I didn't know it was awake, and it was just the weirdest thing. I was boy crazy at a very young age. After I had my first kiss, it was just when you experience sexual trauma, you go one of two ways. You become hypersexualized
Mhm.
or you want nothing to do with it. I went to
Mhm.
hypersexualized mode
Okay.
and it became a source of power for me. And I went on to have a series of very inappropriate relationships. I didn't start dating until I was 18 because I was attracted to older men. And I went on to have a series of inappropriate relationships with men that were old enough to be my father. It was just it was rough dealing with that and realizing what I was doing was only hurting myself, but I didn't care because in those moments it gave me a source of power. And I would always feel gross afterwards. And I began to hate my body. I really loathed myself in my late teens and early 20s. And I didn't trust myself. It was just it was almost like my drug of choice. Sex became my drug of choice. And I didn't dive into drugs or alcohol. I mean, I used them, but I didn't abuse it like some of my siblings, used as a coping mechanism. My choice of drug was sex.
Okay.
And it taught my body that that was the only way to deal with it. And because when you're abused at such a young age, you lose your power and doing anything I possibly could to try and regain some of that power. And I just went down a destructive path for a number of years, just trying to deal with it and cope with it and in and out of therapy and dealing with my suicide attempts and talking to some people about it, but not really. I was just so ashamed. Really, there's a lot of shame that is involved in that. And how did I bring this into my life? And what did I do to deserve this? I mean, I'm 40 years old and still dealing with the ramifications of this.
Can I ask you a question? How did you rewire your brain? Like, how did you move from a place of that? Was it therapy? Was it your relationship with your now husband? Like, where did the shift come from that
Um,
took you from that person to this person?
I think a lot of it was with George, my
Mm.
husband.
Mhm.
The first 5 years of our relationship was pretty rough. uh, just back and forth, breaking up, getting back together. But when he finally decided to commit to being in a relationship with me, and I told him, "Look, this we're gonna commit to this relationship. We're gonna give it a go because I'm not doing this back and forth anymore." And at that point, when he fully committed to our relationship, and I finally felt safe, and I knew that he wasn't going anywhere, it really allowed me to settle into a space of calm, just knowing that somebody had my back because I didn't feel like that for
Yeah.
my whole life. I never felt like anybody had my back, not my siblings, not my parents, because anytime I showed any kind of weakness, I was just abandoned by my parents, by my siblings, everyone I knew. I did not have a safe place to be until George. And he has continued to show up for me and be there for me, and I cannot tell you how many times I have just cried to him and he just holds me and he lets me be. He doesn't try to make it feel better. He just is there. He's present with me. So when I say that I wouldn't be here without him, he is truly my safe place. Like just being in his presence calms me down.
Mm.
Is that codependency? I don't know. I don't really care.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I've been with my husband Dave now. It'll be 33 years that we've been married. in the spring and 40 years that we've been together. And I will be the first one to sit here and say I am for sure codependent on him and he is codependent on me. Like if like I'm my own individual person and he is his own individual person, but that's kind of what I signed up for. Like that's what I wanted was to also have us be a unit. And so there has to be a natural codependency in that way. I think it's whatever works for each relationship, but I would definitely say that there's codependency in my relationship without a doubt. So okay, so now you're at a point where you've told the truth. You had this abuse happen to you when you were so young that you didn't know what was happening. You were completely victimized. I mean, anyone is a victim at any age, no matter what. But I mean, you take a child, a toddler who is being sexually abused, and that I think is probably putting it in an ultimate victim category. So you didn't know what was going on with you. Then things surfaced later as you were in your mid-teens, and then you went ahead and you told your family what was happening. Let's talk about the cost of that for a second. The cost of telling and not telling, because you didn't tell what was going on for a long time. So if there are people who are listening to this conversation right now and they are the ones who are navigating the early stages of what you've already gone through, like this horrible thing has happened to them, or maybe it's continuing to happen to them and they have not talked about it, have not reached out, have not shared, let's give them some guidance just from your own experience on how to do that. Like, what was the price of telling? And what was the price of staying silent?
Looking for mental health resources that actually suit your unique needs and the community you come from? Then you need to check out the Help Hub, the most inclusive free online platform filled with the mental health resources, tools, treatment options, and trauma-informed content to help you navigate whatever mental health challenge you're facing in the moment. Whether you're managing stress, anxiety and depression, abuse, grief, suicide loss, or surviving trauma, the Help Hub gives you a place to land, explore, and find exactly the help you need when you need it most, without having to start from scratch. Visit thehelphub.co.
The price of staying, which I did, the first person I told, and when I had my first flashback, I was on the phone just doing normal teenager things, talking to a boy that I liked, is when I had my very first flashback. And he's ultimately the first person I told. And I was 14, he was 15. He didn't know what to do. But, and he's like, oh my gosh, you need to tell your parents, you need to tell your parents. And I saw him, we ended the conversation. I was crying. I saw him the next day at school and he was very sweet. And I just ultimately kept silent because the flashbacks kept coming. And again, I did not want to believe it was real. How could this person that I love and adore do this thing to me? And it eventually started to eat me alive from the inside out. And I just wanted that pain, that darkness to end.
Can I ask a question? Was it the parts of it? I'm sure the answer is yes to both questions, but the parts of it that were eating you were alive, was it the disbelief that your brother could be the person doing this to you, or was it the uncertainty of whether or not this thing actually happened because you
Yes,
were so little? Okay, so it was both.
both.
Okay.
Definitely both. I didn't want to believe it was real.
Mhm.
First and foremost, I did not want to believe it was real because he was the golden child. He was, there's a couple of children in our family that are considered quote unquote the golden children and could do no wrong. And he was one of them. And so, yeah, it was definitely grappling with both those ideas.
Do you remember what it was that crystallized? You said it was in a moment when you were talking to that boy you liked on the phone where things started to kind of flood into your brain about what had happened. Was there something that crystallized in your mind that said this was real? Like when you crossed over from that place of being ambivalent, wondering, questioning, to this place of no, 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 this thing happened. What was it? You remember?
When I would think about it, my body would shake.
Okay.
And that is the ultimate, your nervous system trying to cope with what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, as we're talking about it, I, I shake. I get a knot in my stomach, and especially when I'm talking about it for the first time. So some people didn't even know at all. For example, my younger brother Ward, who I am incredibly close with, he didn't know about it until about 3 or 4 years ago. And whenever I talk about it, it's just a visceral reaction. And that's how I know it's real. This trauma is deeply rooted in my DNA. And just what my body responded to, I was like, okay, this is real. This actually happened.
And then, of course, as we already said, your brother admitted it.
Yeah, he did.
So you know that it was very, very real. So,
Even though
okay.
in his mind, it wasn't that bad. That's the part that really just for him to minimize what he did because he didn't feel like it was that bad. And I was very fortunate that he stayed inside the FLDS cult and he was not an active part of my life. I've only seen him less than 5 times in the last 20 something years.
Okay.
The few times that I have seen him, I turn into that little girl and I'm just helpless. And he has cornered me a couple of times and like forced me to hug him. You
Oh,
want
God.
to, ugh.
No, he's got to get through me next time. So,
Well, and he does it he did it at funerals, our brother's funerals. And it's like, you're already vulnerable and just, what
mhm.
do I do with this? And then he just
Yeah.
corners me and I
Yeah.
become paralyzed. And
Yeah.
it's awful. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I really wouldn't.
Yeah. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. Now, let's talk for the next little bit about what healing for you actually looks like. When you think about healing, it's not a destination as much as it is a choice that you make every day. I mean, you and I have talked about that now a bunch of different ways in regard to all of the different ways that you've survived or we've survived. It is a conscious choice. You wake up every day and say, I want to be here. I want to make the most of my day and my life and my opportunities and my family and all those things. So, what does it look like for you right now? What are some of the small ways that you reclaim your body, your voice, your power?
Um, Sunlight. It
Mm,
sounds so crazy.
doesn't
And
at all. It doesn't at all.
I mean, when I was going through the thick of it of losing 4 family members in 5 months, I think I mentioned before that I would lay out on the trampoline or I'd lay on the grass. It's called grounding. I listen to music. I actually have a playlist where it's like a certain frequency that calms your nervous system. See, this morning I had that playing because talking about these things is not easy. Would it be easier for me to just go on with my life and heal in private and not talk about this? Absolutely 100%. I don't enjoy talking about this and sharing this publicly. It's very hard for me. And
I know it. I know it is.
I do it because if it can save one other person, I'm good with that. And every time I feel like I can't do this, I don't want to do this, I get a message from somebody that tells me that I'm changing their life and how
Hmm.
inspiring it is. And it's not about adoration. It's really not. I really just want to make a difference in somebody else's life. And if I can give a voice to a young child or a teenager that maybe hear it or come across my social media page, and I've said it, message me on my social media platforms. If I need to be that safe person that you can talk to, do it. And that's another thing I want to tell people is if you tell somebody, your parents, that you were abused and they do not do what is necessary to get you help and get you into therapy, find somebody who will help you. Talk to somebody else. I guarantee if I had talked to my best friend's parents who were not of our church, I guarantee if I had told her mom, she would have done anything to help me. So yeah, that's my biggest message there. Find somebody who will help you, somebody that will listen and
Yeah.
take care of yourself. Go to therapy, write about it, talk about it, listen to music, go for walks. My children have provided a tremendous amount of healing. And as they've grown up, they're almost 12 and 14 now. And when they've reached those ages where I was abused, oh, when my daughter was that age, I
That's got to
mean,
be so hard.
you want to talk about some being hyper aware and guarding her like a hawk.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Remember, completely different type of conversation, completely different experience. But I remember, so we have 2 daughters. Mine are grown women now, but I remember vividly a few of those milestones, like when I celebrated my oldest daughter's 10th birthday. That's how old I was when my father took his life. So now all of a sudden, I'm thinking about her being where I was. And I remember when I myself turned 45 years old, the same age my father was when he passed away. Or Dave turned 40. Those are moments that really have a very deep and profound impact. And you're kind of hardwired to just internalize them in a very different way when you've had trauma attached to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my children have provided some healing and hypervigilance. And you want to talk about hypervigilance just constantly. I, again, still to this day, have to rewire my brain to not constantly be scanning for danger. It is a daily practice of I'm safe, I'm okay. And it's learning you have to, the most important thing you can do in your healing process is learn to listen to your body. Your
Mm.
body talks to you, whether you listen or not. And if you'll take a moment to listen and scan your body and be like, what do I need in this moment? It will tell you. And every time where I have not listened to my body, it has forced me in bed, like ended up sick or something like that. The things like this manifest in a physical way. If you do not deal with your emotions, it will manifest in many different ways, oftentimes autoimmune disorders. I actually was thinking about this the other day. I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. My thyroid went kaput completely at 15 within a year of me having these flashbacks.
Hmm.
And the doctor who had been in practice for 30 years said that was it had kind of swelled, became what's called a goiter.
Sure.
And he said it was the largest goiter he had ever seen on any patient. And I was 15. So hypothyroidism is an autoimmune disorder.
Well,
Uh,
I mean,
And it's
anyone,
interesting
no,
that it was in my throat because I
yeah,
felt silent because I had to be silent about it.
that's so interesting. And our brains and our bodies are connected. They are all hardwired. So when our physical body is in pain, it's why when so many people deal with physical injuries or limitations or long-term physical setbacks, their mental health is so deeply affected, and vice versa. When your mental health is impacted, your physical body takes on those signs and symptoms and starts displaying in a corresponding way. So everything is connected, and it doesn't surprise me one bit, especially considering the timing of everything that was going on in your life and when things started to come out and surface and you started to acknowledge what was going on. So that's not a big surprise to me. It's just more reinforcement, like you said, that we really need to be paying close attention, because whether it be our brain or it be our body itself, we're going to be getting the messages that something is not okay when it's not.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we flow to the end of this conversation, you sharing your story of sexual abuse today is just, it's you taking your power back. It's you reclaiming your story. And I just hope that every survivor who's listening to this conversation listens feeling that they have the same permission. Like, you don't owe the world your pain for it to be valid. Your pain, whatever it is that you're feeling, whether it's something you have experienced, you are currently experiencing, it is valid. And you get to reclaim that in whatever way you need to do it. So if today's conversation, it was a hard conversation. Like, it's hard for me to sit here asking these questions and hearing you have to relive it. But it's such a gift to those of us who are listening to have someone be so transparent with these experiences, so that the people who are out there finding points of connection in your story can feel like they're not alone. That is the whole point of why you and I are doing what we're doing. It's to create a community where people can see themselves and know that they're not alone. So if today brought things up for you in your body or your brain, here are 3 things to do as you move on with your day and process what you've heard in this episode. Sexual abuse doesn't just hurt the body, it tries to steal your language. Don't let it steal your language. You don't have to share the details to be believed. Your story is your story. And the last thing is that healing doesn't have to be this big out loud thing. Like, you and I are choosing to share on a platform where people can hear us, what's gone on in our lives and what we've experienced. That doesn't mean it's a right or a wrong thing to do. It just means it's the thing that you and I are choosing to do. Sometimes healing is just as simple as breathing in your own body without an apology at all, is just showing up for yourself in the way that you need to show up. So, Natasha, just thanks. Just thanks for your truth today, just for choosing your voice and choosing to use it the way that you're using it. And to anybody who's listening or watching this conversation, just remember, healing is not a straight line. We're going to say it a lot. And you don't at all have to walk it alone. We're here. We're just two people out of a whole world of people who are here. If you or somebody you know is struggling with sexual abuse in particular, please call the National Sexual Abuse Hotline. You can call them at 800-656-4673, or you can call the 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline number to talk about whatever it is that's going on that you might need to navigate. Next week, can you believe next week is going to be our Thanksgiving episode?
Already?
Yes. Yes. So
Where did 2025 go?
I don't know. I have no idea. But we're going to be talking about gratitude and we're going to be talking about grief, which are two really kind of kooky things to put together, but we're going to do it. We're going to talk honestly about what it means to sit at a holiday table and carry a loss or a lot of losses. So until then, don't forget to defrost your turkey. And we're really glad you showed up. If you're here and you've listened this long, we're really glad you showed up. So keep surviving. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the survivors community. No matter where you are in your story, you're not alone, and you're definitely not broken. Healing takes time, and it looks different for everyone. The fact that you're still here and still trying means you're already doing the hard work. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. That's how we keep these conversations going and remind each other that there's always hope.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, please remember, help is always out there. You can call or text 988 anytime to reach a trained crisis counselor like me. And for more mental health resources, tools, treatment options, and content to support your mental health, visit thehelphub.co. We're so grateful you're part of the Survivors family, and we'll be back next week with another honest conversation about life after the hardest things. Until then, take care of yourself and your people, and keep surviving.